Hey there, I'm Imani Ellis, founder and CEO of the Creative Collective and CultureCon, and this is CultureCon Uncut. Hi friends, today I am talking to my North Star, my friend, the Elaine Welteroth. Born in Newark, California, Elaine is an undeniable force in the media industry. As an award-winning journalist, TV host, advocate, and the author of the New York Times bestseller, More Than Enough, Elaine made history when at age 29, she was named the youngest editor-in-chief ever at Condé Nast. Earlier this year, Elaine launched birthFUND, a movement committed to expanding access to safe birth care across the nation. Together, we're chatting about overcoming resistance, knowing when it's time to pivot, and how she took her destiny into her own hands and used her platform to change lives. Hi, Elaine.
Come on with that intro. Can you afford that to me? I might need to
Absolutely.
use that in my life. Wow.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that glowing intro.
Of course. Welcome to
So
CultureCon
great
Uncut.
to see you. Congratulations
Thank you.
on this fabulous podcast.
Spotify did their thing.
Come on, Spotify.
It's giving abundance.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's giving. They understand who will understand the assignment.
They
So
understood.
they are lucky to have you, and I am
Yes.
so lucky to be here in your presence. Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy you're here because, Elaine, the last time I saw you,
Let's get into
the
it.
last time
I need a life update.
you changed my life.
Stop right
So
now.
we were at BravoCon,
Yes.
and I see you at the
Yes.
Project Runway activation.
Acting a fool. Yes.
Everyone's in line. I'm like, guys, I'm sorry. I actually have a real question real quick. And you're like, hey, Imani. And I said, Elaine. And I took your hands and I said, you probably were like, what's happening? I said, I'm so scared. And you said, why are you so scared? We're at BravoCon. And I said, I think it's time for me to leave my job, but I've been here for 10 years. It's the only thing I've ever known. And you said, do you remember? You said, wait, you work here? I thought you only did CultureCon. And I was like,
oh, yeah.
because at the time, it was like the duality, right?
Yeah.
People either knew me for CultureCon
Yeah.
or Bravo, but like
Yeah.
not both.
Yeah.
And the fact that you were like, wait, I thought CultureCon was your full thing. I said, well, Elaine, like, I don't know how to leave. This is all I've been known for. And you said, well, next, you're going to be known for CultureCon. And do you know that 2 weeks later, I put in my notice?
I am so proud of you.
Ugh.
First of all, I am not surprised. Second of all, and third of all, my recollection of that conversation was something to the effect of, Imani, what are you still doing here?
Yes.
Like, CultureCon is your castle.
Yes.
You are the queen of that. Why are you wasting your time over here?
Yes, you couldn't believe I was still there. You
I
were
was
like,
like, wait a minute. When did you quit your job? And you were like, actually, I think you said I thought you said you had just quit or you were about to quit.
I was about to.
Let's go.
Yes.
Let's go. It's about to get so much better. You just got to
Yes.
get over this hump. And I knew how hard that hump is to get over, even if you know it's time and even if you have the vision for what comes next. Like, it is enormously terrifying
Yes.
to like just put your foot on that gas pedal and make that last push. Like, you had done so much. I mean, most people, it's hard for anybody, but most people do not have as much ahead of them already built out as you did. So for me, I'm like, girl, what are you even scared about?
It was,
Step out.
yeah, step
On
out.
faith. Yeah.
And step out. And it was one of those things that, sometimes for accountability, you have to keep saying it out loud. So
Yeah.
I had said, like, oh, yeah, any day now, I'm going to let them know. But I hadn't yet.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, I just was like, whatever's on the other side is scary. But I just
But
feel
you were
like
already
doing the thing.
You were already doing the thing on the other
Yeah,
side.
on the
So
other
what
side.
was it for you? Like, now in hindsight, because now you've done it,
Right.
right? Like, you're on the other side of fear. You have taken the great leap, and look how the road has just unfolded for you. But when you look back
Yeah.
in hindsight, what was it for you specifically that was holding you back from taking that leap?
I think I realized because I had started that job when I was 21, I was leaving at 31, so many formative years. My identity was very aligned with it. And I loved my job. I think a lot of people, a catalyst is they're unhappy.
Yes.
And so they're like, I'm going to go to something better.
Yes.
But and we're going to talk about this because I'm so obsessed with your journey in terms of having different dreams.
Yeah.
Because I had kind of realized my dream and I hadn't really thought about what happens when you leave the dream. And, I want to go back to you. You're arriving to New York City. You don't know anyone. You're arriving from a small town. And I read that you were cold calling. And you end up cold calling the editor-in-chief of Ebony. I mean, take me back because I just feel like you've always gone from something to something. Where did that fire come from?
I think it came initially from first really knowing what I didn't want to do. Like living in the easy, attainable path that seemed sexy to other people. Like, basically, I took an internship that sounded sexy on paper, that felt like a respectable career path that would pay me. It was in advertising, and I hated it. It was so not me, and I felt so small in that environment, and I felt like such a misfit, and I didn't feel like I could be my best self. And when you know what it is, when you know what that feels like, you realize that what's scarier is staying somewhere where you will not grow and where you will atrophy. Like that is scarier than taking a big bet and just going after the thing you really want. So I think it was, for me, important to first understand what I don't want to do in order to give me the fuel to go after and to name and claim the thing I really wanted, but was too afraid to say out loud. And so that's what gave me the guts to say, well, it ain't this. So I'm so glad that I went on that journey because it got me to New York City. It exposed me to, this exciting lifestyle, and to go-getters that, inspired me. And I thought, like, if I could run the streets of New York, and if I could make it here, then I want to be doing the thing I really want to do. And I came back for one last semester, and I just went really hard in the paint, as the kids say, towards this magazine career, even though it felt unattainable for someone like me who doesn't come from wealth. I don't have connections. I didn't know anyone who even lived in New York, let alone worked in one of the most competitive industries in the world. But I discovered Harriet Cole, who at the time was the editor-in-chief of Ebony, just in a random Google search. This was pre-Instagram, y'all.
Wow.
Okay, so there was no easy way to just slide into her DMs and ask, for coffee. I had to find her assistant's information. I had to find her email, and I just cold called like a crazy person again and again. And I emailed, and I basically professionally begged for an informational interview until the point where I just offered to fly across the country, bring some coffee, act like it was no big deal. And the assistant was like, you don't do that. I will find you 15 minutes on her calendar if you stop calling. And I was just like, sounds like a great deal. Like, it was like, I don't know if you know the Dumb and Dumber reference. You might be too young, but they're like, there's this part where it always comes up for me. So you're saying there's a chance.
Of course.
Right.
Yes.
Don't tell a determined Black woman that there is a window.
There's a window?
'Cause I'm jumping through it.
Absolutely.
And so we had that informational. Those 15 minutes turned into 45 minutes. At the end of the call, I said, if there's ever an opportunity to work with you, keep me in mind. We hung up. I thought I'm never going to hear from her again, but my path is clear now. I know exactly what I want to do. I want to be this woman, and I'm going to make it happen. I made my A to Z plan about how I was going to make this dream happen, not just getting into magazines, but to do what this woman did, which was create a multifaceted media career that allowed her to realize a multitude of dreams. So from the very beginning, the person that was my North Star was multifaceted, was a multi-hyphenate before that was even a thing.
Right.
And I aspired to be more than one thing. And I never saw that as a possibility. We are asked to check boxes. We are asked to choose one major. We're asked to, say what you want to be or who you are associated with one job or one career path. I always found that limiting. So through learning about her and her career and seeing that as a blueprint, I saw magazine editing as a launching pad to do all these other things. So I came into the industry as a young person with a long game plan.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wasn't just thinking about the short game. I wasn't just like, oh my God, I'm going to be in this industry forever.
Right.
So like, I was like, no, I'm going to come to a point where I will have reached a ceiling and I'm going to have to, take a leap of faith, bet on myself and build the road from there. So I think that mindset is why I never see, I don't really see what I do, the moves that I make as pivots, because they were always part of the plan. They were always part of the destiny. And what's been surprising is like the timing of them. Like everything's happened way quicker than I thought.
Okay.
Or it's felt way slower than I thought. Like it's one or the other. The timing is the timing piece is what surprised me. But anyway, all that to say, she called me back.
Oh my gosh.
4 months later, out of the blue. She offered me the opportunity to come intern for her for the day, to assist her on set, rather. She didn't tell me what the shoot was. I just said yes. I showed up in Malibu. It was like a dream. I walk in to set, and who is there but Serena Williams?
What?
None other than the Serena Williams. And I'm just like, oh, she didn't tell me this was a cover shoot with
gosh.
Serena Williams.
Stop.
And the last thing I'll say is the first person I saw on set after Serena was her hairdresser, who happened to be Marcia Hamilton, who was my hairdresser for all of my proms. She was groomed and trained in my aunt's hair salon in San Jose, California. And I was like, Marcia Hamilton? She's like, Elaine Welteroth? What are you doing here? I'm like, what are you doing here? I knew she went, I'd always heard she like moved to LA and became some like big time celebrity hairstylist. But I was like, this is my omen.
Yes.
And you got to look for the omens.
Mm-hmm.
You got to look for those omens, because I really believe when you're on the right path, there are, as like woo woo as it sounds, or as cliche as it sounds, like there will be signs.
Yes.
Like confirmation you're meant to be here. So I could have easily walked into that situation unprepared, overwhelmed, intimidated. But because I knew God put me here, God made a way.
Mm-hmm.
This person is evidence that I belong here. And I moved through that space accordingly. I shot my shot. Like, I stood out. I looked for my moments to add value. And then that is just how I've led my career ever since. At the end of that shoot, she offered me a job. I mean, and then it was just like this Cinderella career story for this girl that came from a small town and, went to a state school and could have very easily never left home. So for me, even when I tell that story, like I'm transported back. Like, I will never feel disconnected from that girl. Like, I'm still that girl.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
yes.
There's no like mistake. Like, about where I came from or how I got here or who's really in control of my whole journey. So there's no room for getting big-headed. There's no room for ego. Like, I'm so full of gratitude. I'm so clear that like I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for this Black woman who saw me. If it wasn't for God who put her on my radar and gave me the like the guts and the courage to go after it. And so like once you see that work out for you one time,
right,
you're like, am I going to doubt him again? Am I going to doubt him the next time?
Listen,
like that's how you build the muscle of faith.
I want to go back to something you said about, I think a lot of times we think about the cost of trying something new or the cost of something else. I don't know if we really think about the cost of staying the same, the atrophy that you said, because a lot of times it's like, what if it doesn't work out? But it's like, what if it does? And the way that you talk about your life just kind of blooming in front of you and the mindset that it takes to be optimistic.
Mm-hmm.
Because I love that you were like, I'll fly across the country. Like, what do we have to do? But I wonder, as you were you're on set, you see Serena Williams, are you, and I know you have a quote about faking it till you make it. You don't believe in faking it till you make it. You believe in asking questions. That first day on set, what was your temperament? You see your hairdresser. How
Mm-hmm.
are you moving on this set? What did that look like?
I just remember being on set and being respectful and mindful of my position, you know, at the bottom of the totem pole in terms of the pecking order, very respectful of everyone around me, looking for opportunities to be of service and to add value beyond the call of duty. And that's the thing that I always tell young people: look for opportunities to add value beyond the call of duty. Don't wait for somebody to tell you what to do. Seek out opportunities to add value, and people really will notice that. And then I was very strategic about finding my moment to shine, finding my moment to take my shot. And there was that moment that came where I remember I was standing behind or beside Harriet. We were behind the monitor while Serena was in the pool. And I just kept thinking this shot would be so much stronger in this other swimsuit. And I knew what the options were because I was the one that unpacked all of the clothing and I set up the rack and I steamed everything. And so what's hilarious is that now having the experience of being an editor-in-chief, looking back, I'm like, that girl had no business being next to the monitor, that close to the editor-in-chief.
Right.
Girl, you should have been in the way back. But I
Listen.
didn't know. And I think ignorance in this case served me. I was quiet, but I was present, ever present. I was like her shadow.
Yes.
And in this moment, I kind of cringe because I'm like, oh my God, girl, you really could have ruined it all. You really, really could have thrown it all away in this moment. But I remember just being like, I waited for the right moment. And then I just kind of whispered in her ear. I was like, she would look amazing in that baby blue swimsuit. And then she proceeded to ignore me. And there was this pregnant pause. And I was like, oh my God, I'm fired. Oh my God, this is so embarrassing. Oh my God, why did I just do that? Oh my God, this was I thought you go into an instant spiral.
Yes. No, my stomach hurts.
Yeah,
yes.
I know. It's
Yes,
cringe. It is so cringe. And then without looking at me, without acknowledging what I said, she goes, great, Serena, so next we're going to try you in the blue bathing suit. And I go, and I was just like, yes.
Oh, yes.
I was like, wait. And so it was a big risk. That was probably the biggest risk, the first big risk I ever took in my career, aside from just reaching out to her incessantly. Oh my God, a huge relief. And then
it paid off.
That swimsuit shot became the cover.
Are you kidding me?
That was the cover shot. And I'm telling you, these are like the divine confirmation moments. These are the synergistic moments where you're just like, all right, God, I'm where I'm supposed to be. Let's freaking go,
Let's
go. So she didn't listen. It doesn't. Don't listen. I am not telling young people listening to be that girl, to do that thing. But follow your spirit, and when you feel the call to be bold, do it strategically. Find the right moment, and look for people who are supportive of you, who will give you the opportunity. That's not every manager. I was lucky that my first boss in this industry also happened to be my mentor. She stepped into that role, and we had an organic connection. It's not always going to look like that.
Right.
Right? And it didn't always look like that for me. Let me just tell you, this was a one-of-one experience. But I'm so grateful that I had that example of what a powerful Black female leader who has such a generosity of spirit could look like. And I've felt this responsibility to pay that forward my entire career ever since.
And so you're at Teen Vogue and they assign you an executive coach. And at first, you
you read the book.
Absolutely. And at first, you're like, wait, what does this mean? Why?
Right.
But then you end up loving the situation. You learn about zone of genius. And I'm curious about your relationship to feedback.
Feedback is so important. Coaching is so important, and you never stop growing. And there still are things that I'm learning. So I pay for an executive coach who has just taught me about something called nonviolent communication,
Oh.
which is a framework for delivering feedback, critical feedback, or having hard conversations with your friends, maybe, or a loved one, or a colleague, or an employee.
Oh.
There's like phenotype and genotype. There's how you present, and then there's how you're built on the inside. I think we're built on the inside very similarly.
Yes.
But I think that you present as softer and
very soft and southern, very publicist.
Yes. So, and it's not nice, nasty publicist.
Right.
It's like you could tell you're good to the core, but I wonder if you struggle with giving critical feedback.
I love it.
Can you give it?
Yes.
Okay, maybe you can teach me, because I feel like I do it and it's almost too direct, because I want it that direct. Like I give it how I want to get it. And I'm like, I'm modeling this. But I find that people like recoil. And so I'm trying to understand, like, what is the right way, the most loving way and the most productive way, frankly, to give feedback where people's defenses don't immediately go up. What have you found? Like, this is one area where you could be my guru.
I love that our love language is feedback, because I did ballet for 14 years. And so my relationship to feedback, I realize, is very different from most people's, because in ballet, when they give you feedback, it means they think you're ready for the next level. They think that there's potential. When they look at you and they just walk by, they've given up. So in my mind, if I'm not getting feedback, it means you think I've reached the ceiling and there's no more potential. So I would go into my end of year reviews and I would be like, give it to me. Let's go. And my friends are like, are you a masochist? Like, what is wrong with you? But I'm like, do you really think you're coming into a job as a coordinator and you don't need any feedback? How are you ever going to be a vice president if you're not getting feedback? But I recently learned to change my approach, because my approach for giving feedback was the tuna fish peanut butter sandwich.
Yeah.
So start with a compliment,
Right.
Put in the feedback, end with a compliment. But I just read that it confuses people because they leave with the last thing, which was the compliment, and they kind of like suppress the feedback.
Yeah.
So now I start with a compliment and then I end with the feedback. And I think sometimes, I'm sure my team is a little bit like, because I am so Southern and genuinely nice, but I also know that without feedback, you can't grow.
Yes.
And so I think I've found, we'll have to see the end of your reports to see what they say, but I think I found a nice balance of, I love you, you're great, you're wonderful.
Yes.
And
yes,
we need to work on this thing.
Yeah.
Because then it can justify promotions. It can
Yes.
justify your movement in the company. And I think because people don't want feedback, they might become a little delusional. They might become a little bit, there's nothing to improve on. And we all, like you said, all of us have something to improve on. So I feel like people who love you tell you the truth.
Yes. That's fantastic. Okay, so I found it.
Okay.
The nonviolent communication framework. It's very simple.
Okay.
But you'll find that it's really helpful to frame, to tease out complicated feelings in advance of a hard conversation, and to streamline and organize your thoughts so that when you're delivering the hard news or the tough feedback, it doesn't come out as word vomit.
Okay.
Right? Or you don't end up just punking out and just saying the nice stuff. So the framework is 4-prong: observation, feeling, need, request. So you lead with the observation. So I've observed or I've noticed XYZ. And that makes me feel XYZ.
Ooh.
And then you lead with the need. I really, what that's helped me understand is that what I really need or what I desire out of this or out of you in this working relationship or this role, And then from there, you go into the request. So based on all of that, I would really appreciate if you could clear and direct request.
Whoa. Oh, that's good.
It's good, right?
It's like it really is a framework. You can insert and it's clean.
It's just clean. And it's not like at first you might feel like, oh, it's a little robotic, but like that's why you practice. You write it down, you practice it, and then it becomes like a lifestyle. You're just like, ooh, I'm triggered.
Yeah.
Okay, framework.
Yes.
Come on in.
Ooh, I am taking that with me because to your point, the word vomit can almost be like, wait, what are you saying? What am I supposed to be extracting from this feedback?
Right.
And you can use that in work, personal.
We use it in my marriage. My husband uses it on me.
Oh
My
my
husband uses it on me so
gosh.
well that I actually don't realize he just did it. We also have couples coaching.
Nice.
It's not a therapist, it's a coach. And we go through this stuff. And she asked us yesterday, like, have you guys been using this nonviolent communication? I was like, oh, I used it in work, but I haven't been using it with him. And then she's like, what about you, Jonathan? And he was like, yes, I've been using it. I'm like, when did you use it?
Not I didn't know.
He's
Jonathan.
slick with it. He's a slick savage. He's like, yeah. But
I
anyway,
mean,
I would love to be a fly on the wall of like a employee review with you because I bet you handle it like such a boss. Like I just can see it, and it's really I think helpful in personal relationships too, like the friendships that get really where it's more emotionally charged than I think it is at work or in a romantic relationship. Where you really just you want to address things, you want to address the elephant in the room, but you don't want to go to war.
yeah.
You just want to come together and you want to find resolution. So,
Elaine, there's so many ways I can take this. We're going to talk about Jonathan, but let's go back to friendship real quick.
okay, let's do it.
I love what you talked about in terms of it doesn't have to be war. And I think as we all evolve and we have our own paths, we start to realize there are seasons in every part of our life. And when you think of friendship and honestly even this framework, how have you navigated, so many rooms, so many friendships, so many different versions of yourself, you're ever evolving. And sometimes your friends don't evolve in the same direction or at the same pace. I think sometimes I used to have a very binary view where it's like, you're with me or you're against me. I think on the inside, we were talking about this, like relationships are so important to us.
Yeah.
How have you navigated, I don't know, friction? Is that the word?
Yeah.
Or maybe you're not seeing the same, the same eye, like you're not approaching a situation the same.
Yeah. It actually just happened this past weekend with a friend. And this friend, she's so dear to me and her heart is so beautiful. And we had this kind of this moment of friction for the first time. And there had been something building up over time. And the way that it was addressed at first was not ideal. And then, neither of us walked away feeling great about it. And we were able to come back together like 2 days later and just have a really honest and safe conversation. She's like us. She's like, give me the feedback.
Right.
Don't have me out here looking crazy. Don't hold anything in. Tell me how you feel. And frankly, I am too. But I have found it rare to come across people who are as receptive to feedback, who want that feedback. We both created a safe container for the other person to share their perspectives. And it was just at the end of it, we felt so much closer. And she said to me, Elaine, like, I'm all about the tear because I want to be about the repair. Like
Oh, wow.
like she's like, the strength of a friendship is in the repair from a tear. So let's tear it up. Like, you have something to tell me. I always want you to tell me it. Like, you can trust me to not leave you hanging or to attack you. And the same is and I offered her that same safety. So I just feel like it's important to create containers for safety and truth to be exchanged. I think it's important to create like soft contracts with your friends about what it is that you need out of the friendship, what your traumas are, where your wounds are, how they can support you in feeling safe with them. And by all means, you have to own your own healing process. You can't expect somebody else to be responsible for your triggers. But I do think that making them aware of where you're still growing, and hopefully allowing them to hold space for your flaws, and to not coddle you, but create a safety net for you guys to work through the hard stuff and to get to the other side. And I think the friends that don't, they were there for a season.
Yeah.
And that's okay too. Where are you at in friendship in this season? Because I do find that as you level up in career, not everybody goes with you.
Yeah.
And nobody talks about the grief that comes with growth.
Yeah.
I think people say in a sort of cliche throwaway way, like, it's lonely at the top, but like, what does that even mean? And until it's you're like, oh, I thought that was just a saying. Like, whoa. Yeah.
Yeah.
How have you navigated friendships throughout your rise in your career?
Yeah, because I've had a lot of friends for a long period of time, and I did the thing they say you should never do. I started working with my friends, and that was beautiful.
How did that go?
Well, at first it was confusing because there was no expectation, and all these expectations were in my mind. And that's when I was like, oh, it's actually a healthier friendship when we have contracts, because then both sides can agree to something, because I'm an idealist. So I'm like, this is the way it should be. But that doesn't translate to everyone. And I think for me, we were talking about this earlier, is I'm a very like ride until the wheels fall off. So I don't do very well in terms of when people aren't showing up for me or they're kind of showing up for me. It just makes me feel a little abandoned. And so I used to be someone that was very like, let's sit down, let's talk about this. And I would talk ad nauseum to try to understand, where could I do better? And now I think I'm in this place where I'm living by the Maya Angelou quote a little bit more.
When they show you who they
Yes.
are,
Believe them.
The first time.
Elaine, I didn't believe it. Sometimes people had to bop me upside the head, and my dad would be like, do you believe him now? And so I've been
Are we the same person?
Maybe.
Because these are the exact things that I've gone through.
Oh, I've been so burnt because I didn't want to believe it. It was right there in front of me. And I was like, well,
you think you can love them and nurture them into being better people. You can model how to be a better friend.
I would give more. I'm like, here's more. Let me just keep showing. And so I finally am in this place where, like you said, it doesn't have to be a war. Maybe let me just step back. And do you come towards me or do you stand there? And it's less personal now. Because I know now that, again, it's not always forever. Sometimes someone was meant to take you to a certain place, and sometimes they get off the train. And I think I'm now realizing that sometimes you have to say, and this is where I leave you, my friend. And thank you, but we're going to keep going.
Your life will be so much easier because you will stop expecting everyone to think and act and be and return the be like you.
Yes,
to you.
Release yourself.
Yeah. No, your magic is yours, and like other people have different magic.
Yes.
But so much of what you're saying, I'm like, oh my gosh. Are we the same alien? Because I want to double click what you're saying and underline what you're saying and circle what you're saying, because I relate so much, especially the thing about like, I mean, literally everything you said, but I think it's like the idea that you're an idealist and you see things very clearly as black and white and the way they should or shouldn't be. And you just, sometimes it's confusing and it's frustrating that other people don't operate by these same ideals, don't hold themselves to the same standards of excellence, don't like reciprocate what's clearly good and valuable in front of them. Like it's so, but for me, I am in a master class of acceptance rather than controlling. And I'm in my season of surrender. I'm in my season of let it be. I'm in my season of let it go. I'm living in my season of just, not just acceptance of others, but acceptance of myself. The things that make me an alien and the things that are my superpowers and the things that are challenging for other people about me. Like, I'm getting to the place, as cheesy as this will sound, where I'm like, I fuck with me.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to fuck with me. It's like, you can come, you can go, come with your offering, come with your magic, or don't. But like, I like this garden that I am like of my own creation.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Of just
Mhm.
my energy, the fruits of my labor, and I'm going to share it from an abundant place. And that's just that's a whole different mindset.
It's groundbreaking, honestly, and to your point, we've heard it, but
Yeah,
when you
but
really
it
embody it,
hits
it hits
different.
different.
Yeah.
Now, congratulations, you and
Okay, birthFUND.
Jonathan.
Oh, sorry.
No, yes, but you and Jonathan are expecting baby number 2.
We are. That's
Congratulations.
crazy.
And if we go back to baby number 1, you talk about just your experience and how you had done so many hard things, but when it came time to delivering your baby and asking questions, you realized there was so much that you didn't know. And out of that experience came the birth fund.
Yeah.
Tell us more.
There's so much I could say. I mean, well, first of all, I can I ask you a question?
Yes.
As someone who doesn't have children yet, I don't know if that's something you even aspire to. What are your thoughts about becoming a mom one day? And what do you know about, like, what do you know or not know about the birthing process
Mhm.
and even the maternal health crisis? Like, just so I want to know my audience before I dive
Well,
in.
I feel like I was where you were, which was you get pregnant, you get the app that tells you what size vegetable it is.
Yeah.
You go behind kind of this like curtain. You get
Hmm.
an epidural so you don't feel it, and then you bring a baby home. And the more and more my friends are having babies, and I'll sit at the table and I'm like holding the edge of the table. I'm like, tell me. And they're like, it's pretty traumatic. It's pretty scary.
Mm.
And I would do it again, but I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, it was really hard. And so when I was researching the birth fund and the statistics, and especially the statistics for Black women, and then seeing that you did, you did a home birth,
I did.
I was really inspired because you were talking about bringing joy back into the process, and I have not
Mm.
heard about joy in the process, so it's a little scary to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that is I relate to so much of that. And so I guess what I'll say is that, like so many other women and new parents, I knew so little about the birth journey,
Mhm.
like, or parenting, and even less about the maternal mortality crisis. I wasn't thinking about that. And that's, as a journalist, as a Black woman who, is an advocate for a lot of different social justice issues, the fact that I was aware in a peripheral sense of this issue and the stats, but that it didn't feel personal for
Mhm.
me and it didn't hit home for me is, I think it's where a lot of people sit, like, until it's your turn, and that's when it gets really real. And I I was very naive thinking, I have a great network, I have resources, how hard could it be to find a doctor? And I knew very little, if almost nothing, about home birth or midwifery. I was just like, I'm not that girl. I think there's a stigma around that path, and I think there's a stereotype about the kind of mother that does that. Maybe they're, crunchy granola types. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm like more, you know, RAP girl boss, as a term, but like I'm more that girl, and so I'm probably gonna stick with the hospital route because that's what my mother has done. That's what my grandmother did, and that's what we're taught is the normal and safe path in this country. And what I've come to learn is so much of what we've learned about birth is untrue and is really a construction of a patronizing, um, capitalistic
Mm.
industry. And it's an invention. It's a man-made invention. Like, the idea that you have to give birth in a hospital is a new idea. It's a new concept that frankly is built around business. It's about making money. And so it's profit over patient at every step. And that's not to say that every everybody's experience in the hospital or with doctors is negative. And I am not saying that I'm anti-doctor. I really desired to give birth with a doctor. I just could not find one that made me feel truly cared for or seen or respected to save my life. I
Right.
mean, there were a couple of, I don't want to paint this completely negative picture. There were a couple of pretty good ones, but for whatever reason, they weren't going to be available around the time I was delivering, or I would have a weird exchange with somebody in their office, or there was something that just made me feel unsettled at best and completely demoralized as
Mm.
at worst. And by the eighth doctor that I met with,
Lord, not the eighth doctor.
the eighth doctor, because I kept dating doctors. I kept thinking there was something about the struggle. I was like, is it me? Like, I'm confused. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And so it forced me to put on my journalistic hat to really unpack my experience and to zoom out of my experience, to look at the stats more critically and to allow them to paint the picture for what the experience is like for most women, many women in this country who are just not getting the quality care that they deserve in pregnancy. And pregnancy is tough, man. It is the most vulnerable state I have ever been in.
Mm.
And so to be a Black pregnant woman in America in the midst of a surging maternal mortality crisis and to not be able to find care that is affirming, it's truly like it's life or death. So
Wow.
it becomes really real. Like suddenly these statistics that feel like they're about someone else, that feel like I'll be fine. Like my privilege will insulate me from those statistics. You realize how warped that thinking is, and how easy it is for women even like us to fall between the cracks of a very, very broken maternal health care system. And when you see what happened with Serena Williams, you hear about what happened with Beyonce's birth story, you recognize that privilege does not prevent you from becoming a statistic
Wow.
as it relates to this maternal health crisis. It affects all of us. And it's not just a Black woman's issue, which is another piece that I feel like needs debunking.
Mm-hmm.
50% of mothers in this country define their birth experiences as traumatic.
Oh my gosh.
50%.
50%?
And this is one of the wealthiest countries in the world.
Right.
And this is, by the way, the deadliest country in the industrialized world to give birth in. But nobody is talking about it. And so I feel like I just had this aha moment as I was going through this process. And thankfully, as I found this other path, which is midwifery care, and I started to understand more about it and how this patient-centered, holistic model of care is truly life-saving. What I discovered that many health professionals know is that midwifery could prevent 80% of these deaths. And 80% of these deaths are preventable.
Wait a minute. Wait. They're
80%
80% are preventable?
of these deaths are preventable. So when I understood that, I was like, wait a minute. So we know how to save these lives. We know that if we invested in midwifery care as a solution, we could solve this crisis in our lifetime. Say less. Like
Right.
we're the same kind of gangster.
Absolutely.
So I'm like, oh, I'm going to rally everybody I know. I'm going to not stop talking about this, and I'm going to build my own, from my corner of the world. I'm going to build and invest in this solution. I'm going to build into it. And so it really started with just like after I gave birth to a healthy 9-pound baby boy at home
The
with
cutest.
surrounded by Black midwives who didn't just make me feel, they didn't just make me feel like, thank God I survived. Like they helped me come out on the other side in my power in a way that I can't even describe to you. Like there's like 1.0 Elaine, and she was pretty badass at on her own, but giving birth in a dignified, empowered environment with the support of these Black women who helped me unlock my power was transcendent. It's like I am operating in 2.0 land, and I'm excited for 3.0.
Absolutely.
So there's something to be said about the spiritual aspect of giving birth and the sacred nature of it. And I don't want to, and I hope that this resonates with people out there who, you know, I think you hear this from certain types of people and you're like, okay, that sounds woo woo. That's like bohemian and very earthy and very like, that's not my vibe. But like, I'm not that girl.
Right.
And it's awakened me. It's like really expanded my sense of self in a way like I will never be the same again. And I want that for other women. I want that for other families. And I just think if there's a way to prevent death, let's do it. But also, if there's a way to set women free, if there's a way to reacquaint women with their power at a time when our rights are being stripped from us systematically, and if we can work through birthFUND outside of those systems to build our own community where we save us and where we can build capital that creates this safety net for us, like that's what I'm about. And so I've just been on fire since this calling kind of dropped into my consciousness. It's something that you cannot unhear. It's something you cannot ignore. If you feel like called to this work, you have to answer that call and run with it. And so I have. And birthFUND has just been honestly the most rewarding thing I've ever done with my career. It's been the most rewarding thing I've ever done with what I've been given. And I've been given a lot, you
Yes.
know, and it really does feel like a culmination of all the things I've ever done in my career, all the lessons and skill sets and the networks that I've, you know, acquired or nurtured over the years. And it's all just applied to this thing that I couldn't care more about and that I think more people should care about. And so it's like, it's not a pivot. It's not a career pivot. It's a career culmination moment. And I will continue to do all the other things that I do. I will continue to do more of that into the future. I'm working on my second book. There's so much more.
And you've galvanized Serena Williams, Chrissy Teigen, Kelly Rowland. I mean, what does it feel like to be surrounded by your friends, powerful women who also can admit that, to your point, this is the most vulnerable you've ever felt? Like that duality of being both, you know, soft and strong. I guess, what has it meant to build this alongside such powerful women?
I feel so grateful. I feel so grateful that they answered the call as well. And I really wasn't sure that anyone would. I wasn't sure
Yeah.
anyone would care. It is so easy to see yourself as separate from this cause, especially if you're, you know, I mean, there's so many anyway. But I mean, what a full circle moment to be able to say that, like, I was that intern on set with Serena,
Right.
like gagging, like what? And that all these years later, I would be able to call on her to support this movement, and she answered the call immediately and said, "Absolutely." Not only did she say, "I'm in," but she was like, "Call my husband because he will be into this too." And that was such a big part. That's such a big part of birthFUND is like creating an inclusive movement where everybody sees a role for themselves in it, especially dads who are most impacted by the maternal mortality crisis. Because who do you think is left to raise these babies when the mothers don't come home from the hospital? It's the
Oh
dads.
my gosh,
And because
yes.
Alexis Ohanian saw up close what Black women go through and what women go through when they're giving birth and they're not being heard, they're not being cared for properly. Like he almost lost his wife. She almost became a statistic. He almost became one of those dads that had to do this on his own. So these two really intimately understand this issue, and they are so great to their support means so much to me, and all of the family funders that I've reached out to, they all said yes like that. I mean, it actually wasn't so hard, and I think what the takeaway is, whatever it is that you feel passionate about, whatever the thing is that lights you up, that keeps you up at night, there are people out there that will rally and ride with you at dawn.
Yes.
But you have to initiate the ask, and you have to be willing to roll up your sleeves and do the work. But trust that if you build it, they will come. And also, right, especially right now in this climate where there are so many problems that feel too fucked up to fix, that feel so much bigger than us, and this pull to just sit your ass down and not do anything about it is so strong. It's like, because it's never felt heavier than
It's
it
so
does right
heavy,
now.
yeah.
But because of that, if someone gives you a simple way to be a part of the change and can really like make the case and the call to action clear, you will be so surprised at how people show up and show out. And that's what I have found is like in dark times, if you can shine a light where people will follow you, where people will, if you can be a part of creating light in dark times, the people will come. You know what I mean? And they will answer the call, and they will do the right thing, because there's too many people not doing that. You know, there's too many ways to give up. So this has just been really energizing. The last 6 months I feel like I've encountered miracle after miracle after miracle, like the early days of my career, like
the omens,
like the the omen of Serena Williams that day. I feel like that has been what I've been living. I've just been living in the flow of answered prayer. And I think that's what happens when you operate in faith and when you really trust the calling on your life. And it's not easy. It is so not easy, but it's so incredibly worth it. And I'm sure you feel the same way with your afterlife since leaving NBC and building into your entrepreneurial dreams.
Yes.
So how I want to know, like, since I saw you, since you put in your notice,
Yes,
which was probably 2 years ago.
Uh-huh.
Like, how has life changed for you?
Wow. I think it's just so expansive. Like, it already was my wildest dreams. And now I think I have to remind myself not to limit myself. Like, even what you talked about in terms of like mind mapping, it's like, God, just show me how good it can get. Like, let me just be obedient. I mean, I'm sitting here with a Spotify podcast talking to Elaine Welteroth. I
Come on,
just
you
feel
better
like
flex. You better pop your collar.
little Imani is just, what are we doing here? And I
Yeah.
think that's been the honor of a lifetime, is to just let it be good and also redefine what success looks like. And I feel like you talked about Elaine 2.0, soon 3.0. But recently you've picked up hobbies, you're playing tennis, you're glowing, you're resting. I mean, now you had a quote, but you changed it. So your favorite quote used to be, originally it was bite off more than you can chew and chew as fast as you can. And that was your mantra. But then later on, you changed your quote and you said, bite off just enough, chew slowly, laugh between the bites, and digest. And I want to talk about the second version of that quote. How are you giving yourself time to just enjoy the view, enjoy the journey?
You know, what I would say is there's seasons for everything, right? I think I think of it like rock climbing season. Like, there's a season for climbing and scaling. Then there's a season for you reach the summit and you want to enjoy the view, right? But then at some point you see another horizon to pursue, and you want to go after it. And so I think as you go through life, you're going to go through different, stages of that rock climbing journey. And I feel like I'm now again in this rock climbing season where there isn't as much time to rest and to enjoy the view. So anyway, this is a new season for me. Like, all of that to say, like, I really feel in some ways like I'm back to the beginning, but from a higher altitude. Like, I am rock climbing again. I am biting off more than I can chew. I am chewing it faster than I can handle in moments, and I'm not necessarily doing the best job at resting, but the contrast of this pregnancy from the last one is that the last one, life sat me down. Life sat me down, and I really needed to surrender and to sit still, and that there was a reason for that season. in this season looks different for me. And so I think it's okay to honor where you're at, and that each season will have a different pace. It will feel different. It will look different. You have to honor where you really are, you know? So a
Yeah.
lot of people are like, Elaine, you should slow down. Gosh, you've been on like 6 planes this month. I'm like, yeah, but you know what? I've never been happier in my life. I've never been more grateful. I've never felt more on fire. Like I'm I'm good. Trust me, I'm good, you know? And I
Yes.
have everything that I need to be great. And it will continue to get greater. I believe that. So I am gonna take a maternity leave. I
Yes.
am gonna clock out. I
Okay.
am gonna hand over the baton. I am gonna trust my incredible team. Um, and they are gonna rise to the occasion, and we gonna be good, and we're gonna go be even greater. They're gonna take it farther than even I could on my own. I think that is the big flex. That's the biggest growth curve, is when you realize that you've reached the point where doing it on your own has diminishing returns.
Yes.
And when you realize that your dream is so much bigger than you, that it requires other people. It requires folks who have a different zone of genius than you do. This requires like building a team,
Yeah.
like my friend here, Imani, who has done
I
so well. That's the thing I really, really value about you. And I see you as an incredible leader,
Thank you.
and I know that you will continue to go from, you know, from one height to the next, because you know how to choose the right people around you, and you know how to cultivate their skill sets and their zone of genius, and that's a real gift. So I just want to make sure that you know that the admiration that you feel towards me is absolutely mutual, because I
Oh,
feel it. I feel
Elaine,
it for you too.
you're everything. And shout out to the teams. I was able to go to London for 2 weeks,
Girl.
and they just took us where we needed. I came back. I said, "Oh, we closed more deals? What a blessing." Like, I love y'all. I love y'all. I got one more. I
Okay,
know,
go.
but
Okay.
you're here.
Okay.
Let's talk about real quick about resistance. Okay. I want to
Okay.
talk about what happens when an opportunity comes. And Stephen Pressfield, he coined the term resistance. My favorite book, The War of Art.
The War of
Of
Art.
course.
The War of
The
Art.
War of Art. And
One
so
of my favorite books.
One of my favorites. And so he talks about anytime you're trying to go to higher ground, anytime something's calling you, you feel resistance. And I read, masterclass comes to you, they're ready for you to teach, and you're so excited. But you were saying, I don't know why, I'm kind of dragging my feet here. Was that resistance, you think? Or were you had a lot going on?
No, girl. The story with that is I said no.
You said no?
Because when Masterclass approached me, I was confused.
Okay.
Because I did not see myself as a master
Oh, wow.
yet.
Okay.
And I thought, how presumptuous would this make me look to do a masterclass when I don't consider myself somebody who's like there yet. I feel like I've absolutely accomplished some pretty cool things, but I have so much more to do. And I have had to really shift my mindset around that, because I think that's an outdated way of, not to say like, I think that humility is what will always ground me. But also, people want to hear the applied lessons in real time while they can apply them.
Right.
And we don't have to wait until the very end of the marathon to look back and tell your story. And I think my generation growing up, like, the only type of people that wrote memoirs were like old, rich, nearly dead white men.
Right.
And like their stories were valid. Why would mine be valid? So I struggled
Wow.
with even writing a book at this stage in my career, even though I knew I had a story to tell that was of value to people who look like me, people who relate to me, people who maybe have this idea in their mind of who I am because of what I've accomplished, but they have no idea how. And as a storyteller and a truth teller, I felt so compelled to tell more of the truth than you will ever get in headlines or that you'll ever get on Instagram. So I had to really get over that resistance. I faced so much. I conquered so much of that resistance to even the word memoir. I felt like that's such a self-important term. And so I was like, I corrected everybody. I was like, this is not a memoir. This is my testimony.
Oof. Mm-hmm.
You know? So I
good.
had to reframe my masterclass in the same way. I'm like, here's what I've learned thus far. And if it could be of service to someone else, how dare I stand in the way because of my imposter syndrome or my fear of how great I maybe already am in ways that I can't even see or appreciate. If they see me as worthy, allow me to see myself as worthy too. Allow me to see what I have to say as worthy, not in a grandiose, egotistical way, but from a service-oriented place. If I can be of service, don't let yourself stand in the way. And can I tell you that doing that masterclass was one of the most rewarding things, aside from birthFUND, of course. But it's like the thing that I get stopped for in the streets.
Incredible.
If I'm out. And I get the funny thing about masterclass is that, like, I have like the people who read my book are like the people I wrote it for. You know what I mean? Like, I can probably spot those girls in the room, and I'm like, sis, you know, like, we're all the same aliens.
Yes, together.
Right? We're like the same unicorn, like brand of unicorn. But like, old white men will be like, I watched your masterclass, and God, I got so much out of it. Thank you so much for these frameworks that you gave and I'm just like, really?
Yes, it's on the Delta plane. You're
Really?
everywhere. It's incredible.
Who knew? And imagine, I almost stood in the way of that.
Oh my gosh.
My fear and my self-doubt and my, inferiority complex that I still have. Like, I don't know in my 2.0 era if I still have that same resistance in the same way, to be honest with you. But 1.0 version of me, which lasted up until literally 2 years ago when I pushed that 9-pound baby out.
I know, that's right.
In my bedroom, which gave me a whole different level of like, oh, you unfuckwitability.
Yes.
You know? But in that era, like, yeah, I think people probably thought I thought more of myself than I actually did. But I'm so grateful that I was supported and pushed to do that, because it was such an offering that has, like, it been reflected back to me tenfold.
Listen, Elaine, next time
do this all. We can do it. This should be like a slumber party podcast.
Yes, because next time I'm going to ask you about the fried chicken recipe that got Jonathan to propose.
Ooh, girl.
But we'll save that. We'll save that for part 2.
It was my mom's.
It was your mom's
and she really
recipe.
did cook it. Okay,
Ooh.
And I haven't cooked that chicken since. Let me just tell you.
Screaming. Elaine, cheers to you.
Cheers to you, sis. Thank you so much for having me
Of
on. This was such an
course.
amazing conversation. Cheers.
What an amazing conversation with Elaine. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you to Spotify for producing another incredible episode. Remember, embrace your story, celebrate your wins, and keep pushing boundaries. For more unfiltered conversations with Black culture shifters, subscribe to CultureCon Uncut on Spotify. And if you're feeling inspired, tell a friend to tell a friend.